Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. My guest today is my new friend, David Comfort, who joins me from beautiful Costa Rica, literally one of the best places in the world for people looking to move abroad and start a new life in a foreign place. Costa Rica has quite a bit to offer. So we dive into all of that, and we go real deep on what's called Rise Costa Rica, or Rise for short, which is David's community and project that he's the lead principal on. He's built this incredible life for himself in the beautiful mountains of Costa Rica, and there are families from all over the world joining him there. They have everything in place to build a beautiful community with school in place for the children, activity centers, lots of community events, ton of things going on there, and not least of which is the great cost of living and, as David says, higher quality of life. So pretty incredible to go through all of that. We also go into some of the practicalities of moving to a place like Costa Rica, the things you need to know, visas, taxes, and et cetera. And I think most importantly, just diving into David's mindset around life and how you get to the place that you ultimately need to be in. It was very inspirational for me, an incredible conversation, just a lot of fun getting to know him and learning more about what they're doing at Rise and learning more about a wonderful place like Costa Rica. So I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I really hope you do as well. Please help me in welcoming David to About Abroad. Awesome. Well, I'm just going to kick us off with that question about whether you call it a community or whatnot. And it sounds like that's going to take us down an interesting road. And then I imagine we'll kind of circle back to your personal story and all of that. So it'll all weave together.
Great. Awesome. So yeah, you asked us what are we? Are we a community? Are we a ecosystem? Or what is it that we are? And it actually took a little bit of time to get that level of clarity as we first started. And so what we narrowed down to, and what helps us to execute so well now, is we are a family-focused community, and really owning that. And what does that mean to us? It's a family-focused community that integrates homes, a Waldorf school that we started, a co-working facility for adults to run their businesses, a hospitality property called Kidkara that brings amazing programming right on site, and an organic farm because our community prioritizes healthy living and healthy eating. And so integrating those into one, what I would call dynamic ecosystem, that is the invitation. Like, it's a way of life, it's a lifestyle that I think a lot of people are resonating with, particularly in this day and age.
Man, it sounds like such a great, wholesome place when you talk about the school aspect. And I think if I gather correctly, I would love to hear from your mouth directly if I'm incorrect, but it seems like you can mention all these different elements of what Rise is, the school and the community center and the co-working and the beautiful land, the farm, but the school is kind of at the center of it in a lot of ways, in that family friendly atmosphere. Is that correct to say?
That is. It was tough to own it, and as you're going into a project like this, to think of your audience as being that narrow. There's some pressure around that when you want to expand it and cast a wide net. But really what we found is that that's who we are. And the school and our children are the drivers of the decision-making as a family, and particularly around education and the environment that we would like to see for our children. And I know that most of the parents that I network with, they'll move virtually anywhere to get that environment if it's achievable for them. And so to put the focus on that, and then put in the pieces that also support parents themselves and complete family living, that was what I told my friends when I was living in Southern California. I'd say, what do we need to put in place for this to be an easy yes for you? And within a year after we moved here, 5 families families with their kids that we knew who had no intentions of moving anywhere, much less out of the country, not only moved to Costa Rica, they moved right here where we are. And so from my daughter's point of view, we moved and all her friends moved to Costa Rica, within a year. So that was the invitation we were making.
That sounds so dreamy. Like I'm picturing myself as like a teenager or something, thinking like, yeah, we moved to Costa Rica and I brought all my friends. Like you're like living on vacation in a lot of ways from a kid's standpoint. And then you put it in this like incredible community where that sounds like it's just like growing and thriving. Are the kids enjoying it? Your kids in particular?
They love it. So I have a 7-year-old. We moved here when Kira was just turning 5. It's interesting when you ask that question about a year into living here, or maybe not even a year. She hadn't turned 6 yet. I said, sweetie, like, how do you enjoy living here? And I remember we were driving in the car and she said, this is where I live. This is my home. This is where I belong. I was like, oh my gosh.
Your heart's melting.
Literally just say that? Like almost 6 years old.
Say it again. That's perfect marketing material.
Can I get a recording of that?
It doesn't get any better. That's just how we practice, sweetie. That's amazing.
Yeah. Right.
That had to feel so good.
It did because, the most anxious moment for us in making this move here was when she was, just near 4 and telling her that we were going to move because we knew how much she loved her Waldorf school. And when we told her, we were really anxious about it. And we told her and she initially like had a big smile on her face and then her face started to quiver and she started to cry. And she said, what about school? And before I could even like stammer out some answer about, big decision as a family, she said, wait, Daddy, I have a great idea. Let's build a school in Costa Rica. I can help because I go to a Waldorf school. And I said, oh my God, sweetie, that's exactly what we're going to do. And so it's been a really exciting move for us as a family.
Well, I mean, Costa Rica obviously needs no justification for why it's a place to move to. I think it's a world-renowned destination and it offers so much from a variety of different angles, not least of which obviously is the natural beauty and climate and all of that. But I would love to kind of back up a little bit. I know a little bit about what Rise is. I don't know a lot about your personal story, how that came to be other than what you just told me. So I would love to, kind of go back to the beginning. Where did this idea come from? And, did you choose Costa Rica? Did Costa Rica choose you? And what were the methodologies and thoughts that went into that process?
Yeah, this is like a far cry from the life that I lived for most of my adult life. In my 20s, I worked on Wall Street for 10 years. My 30s, I worked in real estate development in New York City and loved that life. And then I met my wife and things changed a lot. And she sort of opened my eyes to a number of new things. And when we went to a festival together that we often go to called Burning Man out in Nevada. And I ended up engaging a life coach that I met at Burning Man who just completely changed my world. And what he did is he opened me up to the idea that ultimate fulfillment from life does not come from the accumulation of things and stuff, but rather from service to others. And so that sounds so simple, but I really didn't realize that back then. And so when I thought about how I could leverage my finance and real estate development background to the utmost service of others, that started to formulate this idea of a community that makes family living full of ease and joy. And so around that time, the freelancer model was really starting to gather a lot of momentum. And you could see that people were starting to work from home more, starting to work from different parts of the country. And so this was around 2014, 2015. And so I thought, well, that's probably going to end up being working from around the world because there's so much leverage for people and the opportunity to do that and have a better life. If you're earning in one currency and spending in another, in a less expensive part of the world, you can incrementally or significantly increase the quality of your life. And so COVID just crystallized that in a way that, I probably never could in a marketing pitch or something like that. And so that's really when I tell people, when I think about business, you think about what are the highest leverage moves I can make? Like in the landscape of things that you can do, you want to try and identify the highest leverage ones. And so when I think about if you want to adjust your lifestyle and your family living, what are the highest leverage moves you can make? You can try and cut your budget for $1,000 here or something like that there. But really, moving to Costa Rica, to me, is the high leverage move. You get an increased quality of life and your expenses come down by 60 to 70%. Like where else can that happen? And so that's what I see it for when I talk to families. I tell them it is a high leverage move for your lifestyle.
I think that quality of life thing is somehow lost in this translation for a lot of people. And I say that because I think it's overshadowed by the cost of living. So people will often talk about moving to places where the cost of living goes down and therefore you're saving money. And then there's this like natural assumption that if that's the case, then you're going to be happier. But that circles back to the accumulation of things point that you brought up earlier that you learned from your coach from Burning Man, which I love. And hopefully we can get back to that because that's fantastic and a whole nother story in and of itself. But it comes back to that point, right? Like it is like, sure, saving money is a good thing and bringing your cost of living down. But if you're not enjoying an at least the similar quality of life, then you're going to recognize that and there's a negative impact there. In this case, you're talking about a higher quality of living and a lower cost of living, which is a pretty amazing thing. So let's maybe pick that apart a little bit. Like what is it about a place like Costa Rica where you're actually improving the quality of life?
Well, so you asked that earlier, like, did we choose Costa Rica or did Costa Rica choose us? And so we looked around the world. We looked at different places on where you could achieve this, or was there a community that already was established doing this? And we couldn't find one. And when I sort of made a checklist of all the boxes that Costa Rica checked off compared to others, it was a no-brainer. And some of those things were, we're a family-focused community. There wants to be safety, currency stability, political stability, warm weather, access to the United States, abundant water to grow. We like to grow a lot of things here. Low construction costs, low material costs, abundant supply of labor, people who speak English as well. And so when I went down that list, like Costa Rica just checked off all the boxes. They've got a reputation for conservation and eco lifestyles. It just all fit. It fell into place. And so it just wasn't even close. The next closest one didn't check off nearly as many boxes. And so that's what, from a development standpoint, why it was attractive to me. From a lifestyle perspective and coming from the intensity of Wall Street and real estate development, what it brings to me is it's this balance and peace. I'm a doer, a creator. I like that. It's a space I enjoy. And I've been in a rush my whole life. And it sure is nice to just be here. Like I'll just walk around the property in the middle of the day, just because it feels good to me. And so when I'm feeling good, your thoughts are good, your energy is good, your frequency is good, however you want to describe it. And good things find you when you're feeling good. And that's how I've experienced life in general. And here it just is amplified because of the surroundings and how that encourages you to embrace that lifestyle. Like lots of people will come to Costa Rica for a retreat and then they get back in their environment. And I'm sure many would say it's just so hard to hold that with all these influences around you that pull you away from that life that you really want. But if all those elements are contributing and supporting that life you want, it's just so much easier. And that's what I think.
Yeah, I totally find this is true for me as well. Like I am also wired in a way that I do just like to go. Like I move at a quick pace and I feed off that energy and I don't mind working a lot, probably to my detriment some. And so in that environment, that hyper intensity environment, I will get right in that boat and start rowing as fast as anybody as I possibly can. And that, that feels natural to me. What also feels natural feels when I go to a place like I've been living in Spain or if I've spent time in Costa Rica, for example, where, there is a little more of that pura vida, like go slower mentality, and it slows me down and it brings me to a better place, like honestly, a better place. Even if it feels a little bit unnatural at first, it's a better place for me. And being forced to like pump the brakes a little bit has been a positive influence on my life. Like I can see how it's changed my mentality around, the hustle culture and moving forward. And that doesn't mean that I've abandoned that side of me that wants to get things done and work hard, but it means that it's enhanced that side of me that recognizes that, oh, there's time to chill out and work isn't everything. And, I got to enjoy these beautiful days in the Costa Rican mountains or whatever it may be. So I really appreciate that now.
Yeah, I hear that, and that forcing or encouraging you to embrace that side, like that's how I felt. It's also opened my eyes to I'm kind of not as important as I thought I was in a lot of things. Right. It still actually moves forward if I'm not the one pushing it. That's been a little bit of an eye opener for me. Like, oh, okay, I can release a little bit in there, and it still works. So
life will go on. Yeah, absolutely. Right. and so I'm really curious with Costa Rica, where exactly is Rise located, and is that, was there anything strategic in this specific location, or did you just stumble across something that fit the vision that you have? I'd be curious to know about the specific area.
Yeah. So we are in a beautiful mountain valley called Perez Zeledon, and it's about 3.5 hours south of San Jose. It has the fastest growing urban centers in the country called San Isidro de El General. But we're in the foothills about 20 minutes outside. So it feels like this natural oasis. And it was important. I intentionally chose that site after getting it wrong in my New York City haste. Once I identified Costa Rica as the place, and, what does the U.S. tell you? Be on the coast, be on the coast, be on the coast. And so I put a property under contract there. And after a year, I realized, I said, I'm never going to be able to get anybody to live here because I don't want to live here. Every time I come here, people say, oh, no, you got to come next month. I've said I've been here 10 times in a year. I don't like it. And what I didn't like about it was too hot. It was too humid. And it wasn't set up from my point of view for family living. I get why, people have second or third homes or, along the coast. But for me, and what I wanted for our family was ease in family living. And that means sort of accessibility to the support services that you need, and also community. So a lot of down here, it's very mountainous along the coast. And so you get a lot of people building homes that are hanging off the side of a cliff that have gorgeous views, and they're great if you're going to come visit there, but it's very isolating if you're living there full time. And so you have this sort of ivory tower, and I feel like eventually it gets lonely. And loneliness is not a recipe for long-term happiness at all. And so finding that balance for a beautiful place to live that has the resources that you need for family living, having space and access to water and fresh organic food, those were the drivers for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think obviously, I do think when people think of Costa Rica, their probably first thought is they go to the coastline, on either side of the country and think about, surfing or beach life or whatever. But I believe, a lot of people probably also know that it is quite mountainous and there's some beautiful green, natural, jungly kind of landscape in there that's not to be missed as well. And so I don't know do you think that's is that well known, or do you find that people are surprised by that?
I think they're surprised by it. And, the rules in real estate 101 are like location, location, location. And in Costa Rica, I say it's elevation, 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 because where you are determines, the mosquitoes and the humidity and the temperature. And it's funny because not even a lot of Costa Ricans, called Ticos, Like they're even surprised when they come to Parazeladon. They're like, we never knew this was here. And that's how I felt when I randomly discovered it, which was amazing because it was through an act of service that this property just dropped in my lap, this gorgeous property. And I didn't know it was here. And when I was like, what's the catch? This is incredible. Like look at all this land and this town, this place is growing. And I thought there was like some catch to it. We're an hour from the coast, so you can go day trips to the beach and not a big deal. But yeah, when I found this, I just thought it was this undiscovered gem. And it really has proven that to me. It's getting more and more discovered now, but even now there's opportunities to land here at a much more reasonable price than when you're on the coast.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. And that elevation thing really resonates with me as so I enjoy the beach but I would also be one of those that like after a couple months of baking on the beach in the humidity and fighting the mosquitoes, I'd be craving some mountain life as well. So that's so cool to think. And for people like you and I that are from like these massive countries, like the US where you talk about that like an hour, like you're in the mountains and then an hour later you're sitting on some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. Like that's a crazy thing and not to be overlooked as a perk to a place like Costa Rica as well.
Right. There's just all kinds of flexibility. We're in the foothills here, so it's very spacious and wide open. And as you said, you can be an hour to the beach, or in 45 minutes, you can go to where you want to climb Mount Chirripó. And so there's just a variety of ecosystems here that within not only driving distance, but if you go up to Guanacaste, it's like where we lived outside San Diego. When I took my wife there for the first time, she's like, "What is this? This is San Diego. It's brown, it's dry." And there's just all different ecosystems. We like to go up there to the beaches to visit, and we have some friends up there. But for us, like being this climate, I don't know that there's another area within Costa Rica that I would do this project. Like I haven't found a climate or location that fits the bill the way this area does.
What are the people that are coming and spending time here at Rise? Are they living there full time generally, or is it like come and go second home kind of thing, or what does the typical demographic look like?
So it's full time for us. Certainly on the coast, it's different, but for us, it's generally full time with young kids, and we're drawing from Australia, Austria, UK, Finland, Netherlands, US, Canada, Costa Rica. So it's people really coming from around the world. And what I love, which really sort of fills my bucket up, is there's a lot of like entrepreneurs, business owners, just people who willing to like take inspired action, as I call it, for the life they want. And they're willing to make that move and they feel confident about it. It doesn't mean there might not be like some concerns or anxiety about these big moves, but they're willing to take that step. And on the flip side, so that really feeds me because I have high energy and I like to just create new things. But my wife is such a wonderful balance for me. She's more comfortable in spirit space. So she is attracted, those families have women that are really aligned to some of the values and space that she holds in places that she feels most comfortable. So it's, I do believe that we attract, what frequency and vibe that we're putting out. And to date, that's been our experience.
Man, it sounds like such a fun place. Like community is such a big part of this whole life abroad thing. And if there's anything, I think there's 2 or 3 things that come to mind that most people who move abroad for any extended amount of time struggle with. And I think that lack of community can be one of them. I'm also often amazed at how people are able to find their tribe when they, once they venture abroad. Sometimes that can be like a catalyst for building connections with people. Because you suddenly have something so strong in common. But I think, fostering that, creating that from the get-go, I mean, that's kind of at the heart of what you're doing, providing this space where people can come and build community, but live in a place that more aligns with them in whatever way that might be. Some of the things we already touched on, and just kind of having all that baked into one package deal, I imagine has to be extremely attractive to families that are already considering this move. And then they're saying, oh, look, it's right there. there. It's in Costa
Right.
Rica. It's up there in the mountains. It's all laid out there for us. School, co-working, a center to do activities and the food. And I mean, it's checking all the boxes for those people. Do you kind of find that's what people are saying? That's what's attracting them?
Yes, and it's also de-risking it, right? So if you think about like it being a big move, everybody embraces change in a different way. Some are like me, I'm perfectly comfortable. We go here, okay, we're going to go over there. That's fine. I'll adapt and so, but everyone is different on that scale, and so they're going to perceive risk in a different way. And so the more that those pieces are not only like in place, but actively functioning. So we have Kinkara, which is our retreat property. So our buyers come and they stay there and they can put their kids in the school and try it out for a week and see how their kids enjoy that environment. They can eat meals with us. They can take it for a test drive is basically what they can do, and drive around. And I always encourage this. Initially, one of our salespeople was like, "Oh, don't have them go to the other communities." I said, "No, I want them to go to every community and find the one that feels best to them. And if it's us, that's great. If it's somewhere else, that's fine too." And so that's what I feel like people can do is they can de-risk their move. It becomes more predictable, and that's a big response. I feel a big responsibility around that because these are families moving permanently with their kids. They're making a big step. And so the more that we can embrace them and support, we have like a relocation program where we literally interview them and ask them all these questions so we can support their move in the optimal way. And I've done that with my family. I've helped 5 families that I know do that, and more. So we can really support that, and so that families can make the best decisions for themselves.
We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by my good friends over at Greenback Tax. As an American citizen, I'm from one of only 2 countries in the entire world that requires I pay taxes on my global income, regardless of which country I'm actually living in. So when I started my expat journey back in 2015, I knew my tax situation was about to get complicated. Fortunately, I discovered Greenback, and I've never looked back. Greenback is 100% focused on helping U.S. expats with their tax situation, and to date, they've filed almost 50,000 returns for nearly 15,000 happy customers from more than 200 different countries. After 7 years working together, I can say with confidence that they make one of the most painful parts of life abroad an absolute breeze with their automated systems, friendly advisors, and expertise in the very specific niche of U.S. expat taxes. Also, for those of you who may have fallen behind on your taxes or you're trying to get ahead of tax season in 2023, Greenback has your back here as well. They can assist with late filings to ensure you don't encounter any problems with the IRS and to make sure you start 2023 off right. Tax season is on the horizon. Learn more about Greenback today by going to greenbacktaxservices.com via the link in the show notes. If you've made it this far into the episode and you're still enjoying yourself, then I would love to ask a quick favor. Open up the app that you're using to listen to this podcast and leave a quick review. You can do this in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and really just about any platform that allows podcast listening now. If you can't find that in the interface of the app, then scroll down in the show notes and find ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, and you should be able to leave it from there. Thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it and hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Two kind of follow-up questions that are sort of united. One, I guess, what are the main, when you talk about de-risking, what are some of the risks that people perceive that you found that are, whether that pertains strictly to Costa Rica or in particularly to Costa Rica or just in general? And then 2, kind of as piggybacking off of that, what advice or what kind of bullet points are you pointing out to them to be aware of in the process, particularly with coming to Costa Rica?
So I think the biggest is the unknown. And so that's a big fear that people have. What if it doesn't work out and my children are not happy or we're not happy? And so that's why I always encourage them to come here and feel it. And whether it's for a week or a month and to try it out first. And then it brings up the question for some, how can I make a living there? That's a legitimate question. Maybe they could be virtual professionals or own their own businesses, but that's, how are they going to, maybe they need a lot less money, but they need to make something. And so another thing that I encourage them for some to think about is maybe you want to try something completely new. And that was a little bit about why I mentioned earlier this kombucha business, a beverage company that I started here on the property. And that was partially because I just wanted a better beverage choice in Costa Rica. And to me, if it's not there, you just create it. And also it was a demonstration of you can build something in this country that can be really successful. And the barrier is lower than it is in the United States, at least in my experience. In the United States, it feels like you got to hit, if there's 5 really critical points, you got to hit either 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, right? Yeah. Great product, great management, plenty of capital, amazing marketing. But here, there's less competition. Everything, it's less intense. And so if you've come from that hyper competitive environment, you could start a business here, and it can flourish. And it doesn't even have to make as much money as it would in the United States for you to be really happy. I mean, kombucha in a couple of years has now become a multi-million-dollar business. We distribute nationally. We're about to distribute internationally. It's become an enormous business. This was something that I started on the side out of a 55-gallon stainless steel drum in a 10 by 10 room, and because we wanted to drink kombucha. And there are plenty of those opportunities. When I look around this valley in this country, all I see is that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity. Somebody could just step in here and really do well if they wanted to try something new. Yeah.
This is such a cool aspect, David, of this whole this movement towards people embracing global mobility and trying to live in different places, is what you can bring in terms of new expectations and talents and skills to a place. Like kombucha is a phenomenal example. I could have never made that up. That's so cool that you've turned this into a multi-million-dollar business because you had a different vantage point. Like you'd tasted kombucha before. It was something that was important to you. It wasn't there, so you created in this new area, and look at what that does for the local economy, for providing jobs, obviously for you, and just I think the disbursement of these ideas, and from an economic standpoint, but also just what it does to the culture of a place is really exciting. And I think when I started this podcast, one of the goals I guess I had in mind was to not just talk about the remote work aspect, which is I live in that space a lot, and I think it's really important and cool what that's doing, but also there's a million ways to build a life abroad, and I've met people from all around the world who have moved to a place and figured it out, and a lot of times it's by using some skill or some mindset that they had from back home and transplanting that in a slightly different way in their new home and finding the way that works out. And it's really fun to watch.
You're 100% right about that. I couldn't agree with you more that many people don't know what they actually know that can do really well in a different environment. And what you're bringing that information and tuning into, look, what have I learned from my life experience in a different country that could be valuable here? And it doesn't even need to be hyper complicated. Like I mentioned opportunities. In this valley, it's a pain in the butt for me to get my car washed. If I had more time, I'd start a car wash business here. That's an automated, and I don't understand that because it's $3 an hour for workers or less. And why does it take an hour and a half? I can't get my car washed in a place where people like to get their car washed. And so it could be something as simple as that. And you're right that you almost hit it on exactly what I tell people. I said, look around you where you are. What's a business that you think is doing really well that you also feel passionate about? And just look at it. And you may find that if you come here, that's not how it's being done, or you can improve upon it. It doesn't have to be some brand new necessarily idea. It could be just an improvement on that you've seen in your current environment that's not deployed here. And I agree with you 100% on that knowledge being valuable. And sometimes people aren't aware of it, but it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some of my favorite success stories of people going abroad are these ideas where they've someone that comes to mind is Kristen Wilson, who is kind of known known as like Traveling with Kristen. She's a big time travel blogger and vlogger and things like that. And she, and podcaster amongst other things. And she, but she moved to Costa Rica, actually was like her first dipping the toe in the water of living abroad. And she just like fell into real estate, like relocation basically there, like, and eventually became like a real estate agent, a relocation expert. It spun off into all these different flows of cash flows for her. And it became like a thriving, lucrative business that propelled her into where she is today. So, I mean, it was literally just like serving, like she was speaking in English, she was serving clients who were trying to come down there. And it was like, I think what's so inspiring about it is that it's not that inspiring, right? Like it's not rocket science. She was like, right. People don't know the neighborhood, like they don't know Costa Rica. Just, oh yeah, this place is nice for this place is nice for that. Like I've been here for a few months. I kind of know my way around. And it's just crazy. I think we overthink it sometimes. Like it doesn't have to be as complicated as we might think that it is, and certainly not just because you're going to a foreign place. Perhaps going to that foreign place can actually be the key to unlocking that success.
Right. That's true. It can be the key. And I think if you're surrounded by others who are interested in that kind of thing and interested in creating and are good at it, it just creates a synergy. I sometimes call it's like a community synergy engine where you have these resources within your community in the adults and parents that are there and the kids. Let's not forget them. To really just to create and do all kinds of fun things. And that's when I talked about like the environment for our children. Like I love that my daughter sees her dad doing lifelong learning, trying new stuff. If it doesn't exist, create it, gathering like friends and other people around to support and do that. Like that's the environment that I want my child to live in as the default world, that they have a limitless capacity. They're born with that. It's one of the things that I love about Waldorf style education is that they're not just there to teach skills, they grow capacity. And if we can just not smother our children's limitless capacity that they're born with, but instead like enhance and support it as they come into adulthood, like then the world is open to them. And that's and more importantly, they'll believe that that's their default world. And that feels incredibly exciting for me as a parent and a community member to just nurture that environment for the kiddos and just watch what emerges. It's just so beautiful to see.
Oh, I can imagine from the parent standpoint, there has to be like nothing more gratifying and uniting in its own, like kind of something that the community can unite around in and of itself is watching the kids get to have that experience. And actually, could you elaborate? Like, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the depths of the different schooling types. I know the name Waldorf, but like, could you just in a few sentences or a few bullet points kind of outline like how that differentiates what from, I guess, from other schooling systems?
Right. So Waldorf is a educational philosophy based on the teachings of Rudolf Steiner. And my dad, thank goodness, he discovered it in the 70s when I was young, and he moved our family and enrolled us in the second Waldorf school in the country called Kimberton Waldorf School in Pennsylvania. And what Waldorf really does is educate the whole child. And what I mean by that is their emotional body, their physical body, their intellectual body, their spiritual body, and all of these pieces, and particularly critical in the first 7 years, where the emphasis is on creative play, imagination. They're not pushing children to read by a certain age and do math by a certain age. All of their play just brings that into the environment. And so they will read and write when they're ready. I know my dad said, he's like, you just basically learn to read on your own. And I've noticed that with Kira, our 7-year-old as well. So you just hold this amazing space for them that allows them to pursue the things that feel most passionate, but within a structure. There's still boundary to it. And another really important component of it is this emotional emotional intelligence, having children and teaching and guiding them around how their emotions, how they're feeling emotionally. And that to me is the biggest difference. But when I see children at our school here, they hug each other. They tell each other how much they love them. They're empathetic when someone is feeling down or hurt, or they just even sense it. And that's just the norm here. And it's so beautiful and wonderful. And I am a believer that emotional intelligence is so critical in your adult life, in your relationships, in business. Like, I think emotional intelligence is a highly undervalued and underappreciated, but it's absolutely critical in the adult world. And it's a super skill. And I think that the more that we can, remember, we did this with Kira when she was like 2 years old, teaching her about her emotions, and it's just really important. And Waldorf emphasizes a lot of that creativity, energy, and also gives them the skills that they need to move forward in life.
Oh, I love it. Sounds pretty dreamy for the kids, and it sounds like the types of people that are coming there are also embracing that school system for them. Are they typically like families that are coming from a Waldorf background also, or are some of them attempting to try this for the first time? I guess maybe another way to ask that is like, is that a key part of the reason why you would choose to come live at Rise, or sort of a side dish to the main dish?
It is the main dish. And the school, I tell people, it's an attractor and a filter. So I often get questions about people saying, well, how are you going to exclude the people, families that don't fit the community that you want? And I said, we're not going to exclude, we're going to attract. And that's exactly what's happened. And the school is a major part of that, because if you're a family that really embraces a more traditional mainstream educational model, you're probably going to be uncomfortable with some of the freedoms and teachings in Waldorf. And so it brings a certain type of family, and that they may come Montessori is sort of in that line. So there's I'd say a certain worldview that I think a lot of these family members have, and around child rearing, that runs through all of them. And I would say that another part of that, just to put it more bluntly, is a reverence for our role as parents. And I mean that, like, the intentionality, the focus, the commitment, like that absolutely runs through the community here. And I feel very strongly about that as well. And the thing is that the environment here allows for that. So I don't mean to like condemn parents who, like, both of them are working and they're all day at work just trying to survive. And so you can understand that they're forced into certain decisions. But here you get that ease that I was talking about, and you get choice. And I'm sure every parent would want to say, yeah, I want to be all in on parenting and be there for every moment for my child. But their life environment just may not allow for that. And so that's what I feel like we can offer, or what Costa Rica and this community offers, is you can make that choice for yourself, and not have all the pressures of, at least what I feel like a lot of people in the United States feel, especially around finances.
Yeah, have you done the? I don't always like to like go too deep onto the financial aspects, because I know it can vary for everybody. You can live like a king in some places, but you can also spend your fortune in that same place, depending on how you want to live your life. But have you ever done like the kind of mental math, like, I'm living for about 50% less than I was there, and like, you were coming from Southern California. That's a pricey place to come from. Does that? Have you ever done that mental math?
Absolutely. I've done that actual math.
The real math.
So yeah. And for us, it's about 65% reduction in our cost of living. And I wouldn't say that we were living in Encinitas, California, which is a wonderful place to live. People are like, I can't believe you're crazy to leave here. it's beautiful. It's on the coast. It hardly ever rains, which means though there's not a whole lot of nature there. But we weren't living lavishly, but just because of the place where we chose to live, I'd say like our expenses were, I don't know, $13,000 to $15,000 a month, after tax money. And that's not living crazy, and so here, you definitely can live nicely for very comfortably for under $5,000 a month, for sure.
Yeah.
And that means like you can have the support you need. Like if you one of the things that's important to us is having food prepared by others, and because it opens up so much time in terms of shopping, preparing, cleaning, and also keeps you on a healthier diet because they're preparing amazing food that costs next to nothing, and it's all there for you, and that's an important part of the community. Like at the common house that we'll be building there, is I like to commune and relate with people around a meal, and especially if I don't have to like clean up after it, and it tastes amazing and is healthy for me, and so that's really available for people who live here.
And you guys are growing a lot of the food there, like on the property, correct?
Yes, we do less now than we did pre-COVID. So part of how one of the elements that kickstarted the awareness of this project was we did this enormous mandala garden at Kinkara, our retreat center. And I had a drone fly over it while I was under construction, and I posted on my Facebook page, like, I don't know, 5 years ago. And I had 200 followers, and it went viral, and it went like 20 million views. And
the power of the internet.
Yeah. And so we had this enormous mandala garden, and we were growing all of the food in that garden. And then COVID sort of hit, and then we had to close Kinkara, so we didn't have guests that were going to eat all that food. And we would compost that with these black soldier flies, and their larvae would compost it, and that went to the chickens, the larvae. So we had these bright orange, eggs, and so the ecosystem kind of broke down a little bit during COVID. But we've got plenty of room. We have 800 acres here, and to make it just as big again.
How many people do you anticipate? I don't know if it's at full capacity. I gather not, but what's the vision for this 800 acres? Is it going to be a little city? Is it going to, be a rural community? Where do you see the future of Rise going?
The first phase that we just launched a couple months ago there's 54 lots. And they're a little over an acre each. So that's the first phase. The second phase is right near it is another 35. After we get there, I think we'll take a pause. We have permits to do a whole bunch of other stuff, even a wellness resort and residences on the other side of the property, and 800 acres is big. So like when I say the other side, it's like a 10-minute drive. So
it's a good ways away. 800
right.
acres is no little lot. So that's a good bit of land.
Right. So I often tell people when we get to the phase 1 and phase 2 done, I want my job to solely be we have an airstrip on our property. And so we often fly right in, and it's a grass airstrip. And I said, I'm just going to be like Forrest Gump, and my job's going to be to just mow the airstrip and hang out with my family and friends.
It sounds like a pretty sweet life to live. I don't blame you for that. I wanted to ask you something earlier. We never got back to it, but kind of has to do with like the whole relocation stuff, and less fun, less sexy to talk about than some of the things we've covered here. But I think can be important. Any just general feedback you have for families, what you've seen helping other families relocating yourself in terms of visas, taxes, just practicalities that come to mind that might be worth people digging into. You don't need to go too deep on any of them, but if you have any bullet points, it would be really helpful to share.
Right. So there's plenty of ways to get a visa here. You can get it by buying property worth $200,000. You can get it by demonstrating $2,500 a month in income, or by just depositing $60,000 into a Costa Rica bank. So getting residency here is not difficult. It'll take a little time, but you don't have to leave as you're going through that process. I think that for people buying land, definitely getting an attorney is if you're just buying outside of a community or something is important, because there are things that you might not know, like there may not be any internet where you are, and there might not be water, and you can't just take water. Like you can't take it from the ground without a permit. And so there's regulatory items that you wouldn't necessarily expect in your home country that would be important to know here. Like a lot of people looking like, oh my gosh, I just bought the 100 acres of forest. Great. You can't do anything with that because you can't cut down the trees unless you get a tree survey, which literally means documenting every single tree on the property and then getting a forestry engineer, and then you could cut down maybe 10%. So there's things that come up along that I just feel like people need to be careful and do their due diligence, particularly around water and electricity. But the visa process, the residency process is easy. The ownership process, I've bought a property in less than 30 days from identifying it and closing on it. So it's not difficult here. And you asked about taxes. At least for the United States people, there's the foreign earned income tax credit, which means that if you live in, let's say, Costa Rica permanently, the first $110,000 of your income is tax-free. And in the United States, like from the United States, it's because they tax you around the world. And if you're a couple, it's $220,000. So if you're living in Costa Rica, and let's say you're a consultant and your client is in the United States and he pays you in your US bank account, that still counts as foreign earned income. And so that's a huge benefit to have up to $220,000 of tax-free income. And so that's nice.
Yeah, that doesn't suck.
Right.
I had someone reference that one time in this really wonderful way. I thought he said something along the lines of, like, basically, I save around, $30,000 a year in taxes. So that's my travel money. So he goes, I'm basically being paid to travel the world. And I spend $2,000-$3,000 a month on travel. And it's that instead of taxes, I'm funding my travels. And I was like, man, when you put it that way, that income, the foreign earned income tax exclusion just really got even nicer.
Yeah, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound great? Or maybe it's like you hire an extra management person to help your business so that you can take more time off, that's, to me, like, these are all choice, the options to craft, the life that you really want. And the thing is like, it really shouldn't be that hard, because for me, like, the priorities are not that many. You want healthy food, you want a safe and wonderful environment for your kids, you want a place to be able to pursue your passion, and purpose in your life, and you'd like to have friends around. And like, why is that so hard to achieve?
It shouldn't be. And especially if there's another element there that I think a lot of people crave, which is a bit of adventure, right? And
yeah,
when you get something like this, where you have it all wrapped up into one, I mean, the adventure of living in a place like Costa Rica and getting that community feel, you're around like-minded people where you can communicate and you have things you connect around and all the things that you talked about, but then also throwing in this need that many of us, and certainly the type of people that are listening to this, and I think that you and I both have, is this like need to go out and explore and adventure and be challenged a little bit in the day to day, and you get that as well. And I think that's such a cool element to this concept that you've built, is that it really does give you all those things, because I know some people that are living really fulfilling lives in those other elements, but they're a little bit bored.
Right.
They're home, they're kind of going through the same, they're living in suburbia and commuting to their job, an office every day, and they're looking at you in Costa Rica going, going, man, that's where I go to vacation 7 days out of the year. And I want to be living there full time, but I can't because of XYZ reason. And presenting them with that opportunity, I think it's really, really exciting because it's becoming more accessible to people. And it's just cool to see that supply and demand coming together here at this equilibrium of like where people can have it all.
Yeah, that's exactly that's what when you say have it all, that's exactly what I say. And you mentioned it there that people say like I can't do this for XYZ reasons. You can. Yeah. Like I there's been hardly anybody I say what's holding you back? Let's just go right into that. And is that real or is it imagined? Is it around a scarcity mindset? What is that? Because I'm telling you, you can. And I just think you can have it all. I think about, we were just doing some marketing for the ideas for kombucha. And that's one of the things that I told the team, the creative team. I said, that's what I feel about this kombucha. You can have it all. It's refreshing. It tastes amazing. It's ice cold. It's bubbly. It's good for you. It doesn't taste like vinegar. It's not too sweet. It's literally amazing. And so I want to like have that confidence in our marketing. And we've had it from day one, but now as we're maturing as a company, sometimes you start to get more conservative and move away from the thing that got you. We have a very bold design in our cans, and our marketing was early on was it pushed the boundaries, but people loved us for it. And so that's how I feel not only about life here, about our businesses here. Like you can have it all. Like it's not just a dream, pipe dream.
Yeah, it's accessible, and I think getting over those they're really excuses, and I don't mean it in a negative sense. Like they can be real or valid excuses that still be excuses, but there's a lot of people who just won't question the first excuse that comes to their mind. Honestly, I think so often it's a problem that you're trying to solve here, which is what do I do for my children? I want them to have their routine, their school system, education, their community. I don't want to rob them of that, even if I responsible adult crave this adventure, crave this better quality of life. I'm kind of stuck in this rat race because I need to do it for the kids. And so that's what I think is so exciting about this concept, what you're doing at Rise and what some other people around the world are doing in this space is making it accessible for families and perpetuating that idea that, there's more to life than just getting caught in that hamster wheel. And I think that's what it's doing. It's planting those seeds.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up the kiddos, like even as you were saying that, I would like this maybe for some other episode, I want to go, all right, let's really lean into that one, right? That one probably feels like big for parents. And where is that coming from? Like, what is the fear? Like, is the fear, oh my gosh, my child is going to, at 18 years old, not have learned anything because I brought them out into the middle of nowhere and now they're going to have an awful life or something like that. Like at another time, I'd love to dive into that because I have with other parents and uncover the huge amount of potential and the limiting beliefs around that. And because that's a big one for parents. And if you can get them over that, and especially when they see other families embracing that, like it's a big one, but that's one that can be overcome, just by putting a little attention on where that real fear is.
Oh yeah, I have zero doubt we could go far down that rabbit trail, and I'd keep you here for a 4-hour Joe Rogan style podcast. I won't do that. I know I have a limited amount of time with you, so you've already been really generous with that time. So I will let you get out of here, and we can perhaps even go deeper on that. But I would love to maybe kind of wrap up with that and share, just if you could, you're maybe not elevator pitch because it sounds like you're trying to sell it, but I think it just naturally exudes from you a little bit of passion on this subject. What do you tell people? Because for sure you've had that conversation, I can't do this because I have kids or the general excuse that you might hear. What is it that you tell them, and how does it relate to your experience, I guess, specifically?
I think it depends a lot lot on on what the limiting belief is that they have around it. And so it's hard for me to say this is a blanket answer. I'd say the very first thing for me, it starts is by listening, like really, really listening to what the resistance that they're feeling and where is that coming from, acknowledging it, like poking at it, and then like opening up and say, can I share like another scenario? And it might be one from my own life. Like my life is, mutated, from different careers to different locations of living. I've lived in San Francisco and New York City and Miami and Grand Cayman and San Diego and now Costa Rica, and just trying to acknowledge the fear in them and that they're feeling, and then like provide a path where they can start a foundation, I guess I would say, to start to feel more and more comfortable about it and to build off that. And that's usually where I would start, by talking to them. The other thing that some families, they say, can I talk to some of the families that already moved here? And they end up having these conversations like, oh my gosh, they're just like me. They had some of them the exact same fears, And so doesn't it feel great when you're talking to someone who had like literally maybe the exact same fear that you did, and they said, yeah, we did this and that, and now we're here, and my gosh, it's like the weight of the world just came off of us. And I think it's only natural to feel more comforted when you can talk to other families, and it's not just David Comfort, as the developer trying to tell you that. Like, we try and put families in touch with each other so that they can feel really good about it.
Yeah, I find there are two things that really stood out to me there. It's like, I think we tend to imagine that life is really linear and you're just on this continuous upward path to some imaginary point of what we perceive life is supposed to be. So you just, it's sequential. You follow step A, B, C, D, and you'll eventually arrive there. And then I think we also undervalue that we learn a lot. Whatever path you take, you end up learning a lot along the way that pays dividends down the road in another chapter. So, yeah. I mean, someone could have said, probably did say to you when you left your finance career on Wall Street and went to real estate development, like, what are you doing? You're backtracking. That's okay. And like, you learned a lot in that finance world that paid dividends in the real estate world. And then you left the real estate world and you move across the country, and then you moved to Costa Rica, and all these things, someone might call it backtracking. They might say, you're steering off the path, but you've taken so much with you along the way that look how it's all culminated for you right now. You're using all those experiences in this new chapter of life and living more fulfilled because of it. So I don't think we lose as much as we think we do when we take those quote unquote, side steps or sidetracks. So
right.
I hope that's something we all. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I love the way you put that. Like, if you're thinking about it as life is this linear line, then you could understand why the step backs might feel like I'm off the path of where I'm supposed to go. But that isn't, at least from my point of view and my life experience. Like, life weaves, and it's much more fun when you're just in that flow, moving back and forth. For me, always realizing, no matter what state, this is temporary. It might be temporary for like 6 hours or 5 years or so, but it's temporary. Like, there's gonna be change, and it could get like more challenging or more easeful. And for me, like, the more I hold the more easeful path, that's usually what shows up. It's usually when I'm in the resistance place that the chopping, I get into this chopping through mode. But you're right. Like, if you can let go of the linear, I'm trying to get to a certain place and then I'm done, and be more in the place of right here is the most important moment. It'll just guide. Like, I feel like it's a better guide for how you navigate one's life.
Yeah. I think the road less traveled is a lot more scenic and enjoyable than the interstate and the expressway, right? And like, I find that that's something that a lot of people can connect with, is just enjoying the journey a little bit more than thinking about speeding to the finish line. Right. And it certainly seems like you are embracing that. So, man, David, I enjoyed this so much. I know I kept you longer than I said I would, so I'm gonna let you go. But thank you so much for the time, for sharing your experiences, and I'm gonna be watching Rise a lot more closely now, and hoping for lots of success. It seems inevitable. Where can people follow along, learn more? Any links that you want to mention? We'll also place these in the show notes.
Great. Yeah. You can learn more about Rise at risecostarica.com. And that has everything about the community, master plans, 360-degree views of every lot and everything there. And then the retreat center that's on property is called Kinkara, Kinkara. And from there, you can come visit, come stay on the property, attend retreats. And if you love kombucha and you're here, just go to virtually any store and you'll see it. We've got a crazy fun logo and fun and great cans, and you can't miss it. And if you want to come, we brew it right here on the property.
That's so cool.
Now we've got these enormous stainless steel tanks all over, but if you want to come visit and give you a tour there, but that's really what it is. And I hope this has been helpful to people, and if they'd love to come and visit, please, we'd love to have you.
Fantastic. I love the kombucha thing, just like throws like an extra cherry on top. Like, why not? Yeah, we're doing kombucha too. So I'm so happy you shared that part of the story and the journey. Thanks again, David. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun for me, and I hope we'll let's stay in touch.
All right. Sounds good, Chase. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.